recap of our top story this morning. U.S. President Barack Obama has said he may speak out after leaving office if he feels his successor Donald Trump is threatening core American values. By convention, former presidents tend to leave the political fray to avoid commenting on their successors. Speaking at a news conference at an APEC summit in Lima, Peru, Obama said he intended to assist Trump and give him time to outline his vision. But he said that as a private citizen, he might speak out on certain issues. The president described himself as an American citizen who cares deeply about the country. And now joining me to look at the dailies is Trix Ingado. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Great to have you this morning.
Great.
I hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, it was lovely.
All right. So straight to looking at the dailies that we have this morning.
Exactly.
What do we have in store?
So we are looking at Al Jazeera, the BBC, CNN, and an African paper, the African News, just to see what's happening across the globe. But the biggest story are, of course, some of the intrigues with Donald Trump. But we're starting off with Al Jazeera, that's focusing on the battle for Mosul. Mosul is a country that has, a city rather, that has been under the ISIS, in Iraq rather, ISIS control for so long, and they've been trying to get it out of their hands by fighting out the ISIS. So ISIL has been giving them a run for their money in terms of the kind of pushback they're giving them. They're employing suicide bombings, they're using snipers, so it's not easy. It's been actually almost 2 months since they started fighting to regain control of that ISIL-held territory. It's now turned into street battles, and the biggest concern, as it has been from the beginning, is whether civilians are going to be caught in the crossfire. And you know, these are neighborhoods where people actually live. So
right, and it's been quite tragic. We've got quite a number of people have lost their lives so far. So to see it again looking like it could deteriorate is worrying.
Is really worrying to a lot of people. And then we're having some other stories that have been highlighted. We're having an interesting story from Libya. Apparently, a monkey has started a tribal war in southern Libya, whereby the monkey there are 2 tribes in that part of the country, and a monkey belonging to a butcher from one tribe attacked some schoolgirls from the other tribe. It pulled off a scarf. You know, they're Muslims, so the girls wear scarves. It pulled off a scarf and bit the girl and scratched her. This is when
So are they imagining that the monkey had been set? Money has been given to a monkey?
I don't know how this turned into a full-on conflict, but now after this happened, 3 men were killed in a retaliatory attacks, including the monkey, and then, of course, it just became sporadic attacks.
Is it really the monkey that is responsible for these attacks, or are there underlying currents that maybe this is what brought it to the fore?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've been thinking about. There must be some kind of issues that these 2 tribes, tension. And you know, it only takes a small thing to bring out the people's true feelings about each other.
Absolutely.
So I think they're facing a lot of problems in that area of the country, and just the fact that this monkey belonged to the other
one side.
It was.
And I wonder if when they say it belonged to them, is it that they owned it, or did it just come from their side?
I think the monkey belonged to the butcher, and this butcher happened to be from one side of the divide. So when by virtue of it belonging to this guy, it just started off a whole conflict. The problem with this, it's funny, given that it was started off by a monkey, but 70 people have been caught in between. 20 have actually died, and 50 are injured. So
very sad.
The question is, was it worth it?
Yeah, and whose monkey was it? And what's the story of the monkey?
Yes,
anyway, moving on.
There's some story down here about Egypt and Israel having really high levels of, relations, diplomatic relations. In the Middle East, we have a lot of countries that don't feel, usually not really...
They don't get along that well, but it looks like there's something
Egypt
brewing
is making,
right here.
strides in that direction. And then there's a story from Kenya, dangerously cheap. Kenya's illegal abortions. So they're taking a look at how easy it is to procure abortions,
abortion in Kenya.
and how cheap it can be, but the repercussions. This is an age-old story about the quacks that procure this and people who actually carry them out, and what happens to young women and actually grown women after they seek out these services that are not really up to par when it comes to the medical standards. Then we have CNN that is having a funny headline, Twitter in chief.
And of course, he's bound to make news, and he'll continue to make news for a while now.
Yes, so Donald Trump apparently during the last weeks of his campaign period, his Twitter account was wrestled from him. He was denied access.
They couldn't trust him. Yeah. I remember there was even, I think, a tweet that they were saying where if you cannot trust, and I think it's Barack Obama who said that, if you cannot trust him with a Twitter handle, how will you trust him with the nuclear codes? Exactly.
Yeah. So he has regained access to his Twitter account, and he's back with a bang. And this time, he's attacking the cast of Hamilton. This is a very popular, critically acclaimed play on Broadway. So Mike Pence went to see this this play, and he was enjoying himself. At the end of this play, the cast actually sent out a message to him. They said, we are a diverse group of stage actors, and we are concerned that your president, your government will not be speaking out or looking out for our kind, people of color, people from different backgrounds and different countries who are not your typical white person from the US. So, and they said that they hoped that the play actually inspired him to stand up for the likes of them. But Mike Pence said he was not offended by that message, even though it's debatable whether that was the right venue to give out such a message. But Donald Trump took to Twitter and said it was very inappropriate, and they have to apologize for speaking like that to the vice president, who's a very nice person. According to Trump, he did not deserve to be
treated that way in that particular environment. Yeah, but there you go. Trump, I mean, once he has an opportunity to speak, he'll speak. The only thing is you never know what will come out of his mouth or his Twitter handle.
Yes, and what repercussions will come out of that.
Precisely.
So clearly he's not changing tactic even after winning the election. Then we have the Washington Post right here that is focusing on Trump's business empire and the concerns about foreign influence. You know that he's a business conglomerate. He's done well for himself in terms of business, and of course he's not doing business with just America. He's doing business with other countries.
China.
For example, he has a huge deal regarding a luxury complex owned by Turks. So the fact that he is president, how will this affect America's relations with other countries on the decisions that are made?
From the business front.
Exactly. So some people, and this article is pointing to the fact that there is a feeling of a conflict of interest between Trump's dealings and how he will handle foreign policy. And of course, there have been it has been reported that his businesses shall be taken over by his sons, but at the end of the day, there's still
he still is president, and he still is the top dog when it comes to his businesses. So of course, it's likely to have an effect and an influence in how they run the business.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's this story on the same monkey in Libya. At least 21 dead and several injured in tribal clashes in Libya. So this is just taking a look at the casualties, what happened, some of the situations down there in that southern part of Libya, and what might have caused this outburst and the conflict that caused the death of 21 people. Some reports indicate it's 16, some 21. You know, when these sort of things happen, there's always the difference in the number of casualties and the deaths. But of course, it's still weird that it was set off by a monkey. So that's a top story on African News. Then there's a story here by the Kenyan president who has demanded equal treatment and respect for African countries. He was making a reference to Brexit, where he said when Britain wanted to leave the EU, you didn't hear any African country saying, no, you should not do this. But once any African country decides, well, we want to do
ICC.
This, to leave the ICC, to pull troops out of South Sudan, you hear a lot of these voices coming up saying, no, you should not do this. He's saying that when we are partnering with other countries, we are mutual partners, mutually beneficial. beneficial. It's not about one country telling the other what to do with themselves.
Yeah,
so
and Kenya, while we're on that, has been accused of being silent as to whether we are actually leaving the ICC or not, despite countries like South Africa making it very clear for them they'll step out.
Burundi, Gambia,
Burundi, right.
they're all trying to leave. So Kenya is still I think they haven't made up their mind. But I think the latest on that front is the issue of the South Sudanese, the troops being removed from South Sudan. And then there's also another story on Africa News that focuses on the Somali election. So according to that, there's an ongoing election there. It's an intricate process whereby 135 elders choose 14,000 delegates who form 51 electoral colleges that will in turn form the lower house or the House of the People. And between the lower house and the upper house, they're going to elect a president. But the problem with that is that this article says that those 14,000 are voting for the highest bidder. So people, there are actually reports that they're being bribed. So and the money that's being quoted is huge.
I'm sure there are huge amounts going around.
$5,000, $30,000. So apparently, whoever will become Somalia's president, if that article is anything to go by, will be someone really
very liquid.
moneyed. Exactly.
Very moneyed.
And then there's this story on the African section of The Guardian that is focusing on Rwanda. So the Catholic Church in Rwanda has apologized for its role in the genocide and for not being able to abate the genocide that saw 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus killed by Hutu hardliners. So the headline is Rwanda genocide, Catholic Church sorry for its role of priests and nuns in killings. So according to some accounts from people who survived, actually priests and nuns were part of the killings. They actually had a lot of people who were seeking refuge in churches killed, because when conflict happens, churches are usually seen as a sanctuary, a place where nobody can reach you. But when these people went to churches, they were compromised by the people who are supposed to be protecting them. So they have apologized. So I think that's really, it's a good message to be put out there in terms of reconciliation for
All right.
Rwanda. Yeah.
Okay. And now we have another story that's coming up, and maybe we can do this. And well, the head of the United Nations Assistance Mission to Somalia has discussed the issue of surrounding the parliamentary vote that is under after a series of delays in the troubled country.
Chief Michael Keating noted that the electoral process in Somalia is going much better than many predicted. He has, however, called on electoral bodies to investigate any credible reports of violation of rules and regulations.
Negotiated process to figure out how and whether and how a peaceful transfer of political power is possible in a new construct, which is a federal state. So the fact that it's involving very large numbers of people relative to 2012 is already a success. Secondly, it has federal features to it, two in particular. One is that the upper house has come into existence, and a bit like the US Senate, the idea of the upper house is to represent the states. So that's new. The second thing is that it's taking place around the country, not just in Mogadishu. Another thing that's gone well is women's political mobilization. The leadership has set a target of 30% of seats to be occupied by women. Unfortunately, it's not looking as if we're going to hit that target, but we're going to be well on the way to it. Another thing that's gone well is women's political mobilization. The leadership has set a target of 30% of seats to be occupied by women. Unfortunately, it's not looking as if we're going to hit that target, but we're going to be well on the way. The things that are worrisome, of course, is that the process is marked by lots of things that are really, frankly, unacceptable. Examples of intimidation, examples of candidates being prevented from, putting their names forward, or being prevented physically from going to locations. There's a lot of money changing hands.